Okay, so welcome Thursday evening. And this class, this little short seminar is called Qi Medicine for Long COVID. Let me open up my notes to make sure I stay on track here. And we'll get right into it. It's a short class, so let's keep it going. The first section I just wanted to do quickly is called In Praise of Peasant Medicine. In praise of peasant medicine. So this is me, like I said, sidestepping the debate between, oh, is it only things that, science has done 3-tiered trials or is it alternative? No. They're not competitive. They're cooperative or co-opetition sometimes. So like in the Chinese hospitals, their first, when COVID first came out, their first protocols, and they have a fascist society, so they just put out, this is the protocol everyone's doing and everybody has to follow along. But their first 3 were only Western medicine. And then the 4th and after there was a mandate to include Chinese herbal medicine into all of their COVID protocols. And they did that in a way that was sort of just this like same formula for everybody. And yet that formula showed a lot of promise in helping to alleviate some of the more difficult symptoms that people were having with this. So I find that to be a really great example of this type of cooperative medicine. And Qigong medicine, my tradition really comes from these Taoist and Buddhist mountain temples, basically, where one of the jobs of the priests and the yogis is they would wander around and they would collect herbs. And then at least in my teacher's temple, they had periods of time where the primary function of that temple in society was as healers. And they would take people's pulses, they'd prescribe herbs, they would do medical Qigong healing and acupressure techniques. And so while I personally, I'm not in a clinical practice at this time, that's part of my tradition. And that's the tradition that I want to give this class in, is a complement to some of the other treatments and advices you might be able to get. But they're kind of the soft side of lifestyle changes, of tapping into mind-body power, of basic nutritional changes, and pointing out some understandings of the body from energetic medicine that might not be readily apparent to us. And so the good news is the interventions that I will suggest are not so intense that you can't just try them out. Right? They're not going to, it's not like I'm recommending some crazy herb that will blow your system out if you try it. These are little Qigong exercises, little visualizations, and you can try them out and then see if they work for you. And if they don't work for you, then you let them go. But if they do work for you, then you've gained something that a lot of time we aren't able to get from the other avenues that are available to us. So that's sort of an intro, also sort of a disclaimer, because this class is not meant to constitute medical advice. And of course, at no point will I diagnose, treat, or prescribe. And you should always check these recommendations with your physician. So let us get going. What's spleen damp mean? Oh gosh, I'm so glad you asked, because we're going to get into that. So long COVID is, we are in between waves. I mean, if we're the most optimistic, we could hope that, hey, it's over. A lot of folks feel we're in between waves, and this is a great time to focus on long COVID, which is where your acute disease process has passed, but there are lingering symptoms. So we've already heard some of these. These are fatigue is one of the big ones. Loss of sense of smell is another one of the big ones. Ongoing GI issues is one of the big ones. Some of the really hard ones are things like long COVID can develop into diabetes. You can have ongoing inflammation of the heart muscle. What is that? Myocarditis. That I remember my medical suffixes and prefixes. You can have neurological damage. You can have a re-onset of Epstein-Barr virus, which goes dormant in one system. And then when the immune system is, lowered by COVID, that can come back online. A lot of folks are having, for the first time, a flare-up of fibromyalgia after COVID. They're being diagnosed with fibromyalgia, or they're having a re-flare-up of fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue. Did I say shortness of breath? Did I say ongoing cough? Did I say sleep issues? Did I say depression, anxiety? This is what we're dealing with. So let's get right into it. We're going to learn a little bit. Oh, hair loss. Yes, thanks. Don't let me forget that at the end, but it is in my notes. So hopefully I will get to that one. So let's dive right in. We're going to learn a little Chinese medicine, and then we're going to use that to create some possible recommendations for ourselves. Okay, let me just watch. Oh yeah, fuzzy memory and also foghead. Don't forget foghead, very important. That was the foghorn of foghead. Okay, so the one thing that you probably should know at the beginning is that there's a pretty good consensus that first came out of the Chinese hospitals that were working with COVID, that in Chinese medicine, this disease is characterized as a damp, possibly warm plague. And damp, possibly warm plague. This is Chinese medical terminology for what we're dealing with. So what is a plague? This is a term that means these highly infectious global diseases. So it's not just like, oh yeah, some people got it, some people, it's this, so the plague kind of refers to like the virulence of that particular disease, the virus. And what is damp? In traditional Chinese medicine, the language is poetic. And so they say you can be afflicted by various climatic factors. If cold gets in you, well, that's actually stays in our common Western vernacular. They say, oh, you caught a cold, right? In Chinese medicine, that would be a wind cold. Wind means something blew into you, and cold means it's, it feels chilly. You want to bundle up in a blanket and eat chicken soup. In this case, this is referred to as damp. And why is that so? Well, actually, some thinkers believe, like the little spike proteins that we're all so familiar with, which is where coronavirus gets its name, because it wears its little corona, it wears its little spike protein crown. They say that those things are actually, they make it sticky. And what this particular virus is characterized, according to Chinese medicine, is its stickiness. So it gets in and it sticks into your lungs. They say as well, the difficulty in getting it out of you is also considered to be a stickiness in this poetic language of Chinese energetic medicine. So this is considered a damp plague. And a lot of the issues that we see, I'm not going to talk so much about acute COVID, partially because that's not in my scope of practice right now. Like I said, I'm not in a clinical practice. I'm much more in the health promoting monastic aspect of this work. But it will also play into who gets long COVID and what symptoms you get. It's very important to understand this idea of these climatic factors. So this dampness. Chicken soup for dinner. Perfect. Yeah. So one thing to know is that the feeling of foghead and the fuzzy memory, they would say, oh, that's that same energetic of dampness in the body. It's like this phlegmy quality, and your head feels heavy, and it's like you're seeing the world through a mist, or you have to think through a mist. Does anybody relate to that? You can make an emoji or put up your hand or whatever. Yeah. So they would say that that is one of the qualities of this dampness climate. Okay. Similarly, the obstructive aspect of the lungs. So there are a couple of different things going on. One is in long COVID, when you can't get enough breath, either the breath feels physically obstructed or there's some stuff downstream on oxygen actually being delivered to the cells. But for whatever reason, the sufferer feels as if they can't get enough oxygen. One of those things is because of inflammation. And so the low bronchioles get smaller and you actually can't get enough in. But another is actually the presence of this damp and phlegm in the lungs. So this is the traditional Chinese medicine consideration of what is going on. It's a damp plague. Okay, so if you are a Chinese medicine practitioner, then that can already inform what you're going to do about your treatment protocols. The good thing about Chinese medicine is that because it characterizes things in terms of these climates and these patterns and these pathogens, it doesn't really matter oh, wow, I thought I had COVID, but I never got tested. And maybe it was just ordinary pneumonia, but for whatever reason, I still have shortness of breath. We would treat that the same if the cause of it is this damp. And similarly, if you have a friend and they say, I don't know, I got the vaccine and then all of this stuff is going on. The good news is, well, the good news is for me, is you don't have to debate like, oh, well, did the vaccine cause that or did it not cause it? If it presents as these various symptoms of damp or what we'll talk about as qi deficiency, then you just treat that pattern. Oh, I'm sorry, you just address that pattern. If you're not a medical professional, you don't diagnose, treat, or prescribe. You just address that pattern. And that's what we're working with. So we're working with these climatic, poetic energies, and we're working with patterns. And that really simplifies the matter. So yeah, the breath wasn't much of an issue, thank goodness, but pain and tiredness. Yeah, so it's going to manifest differently. And we don't really have time to go into all of why that is. But according to Chinese medicine, it will basically, usually it'll hit your weak link. It'll hit your weak link. So if your weak link is in your pancreas, that's where you're going to get pancreatitis or diabetes. If your weak link is just, what we would call spleen damp, which we'll talk about in a minute, then you're not going to get some of those serious things, but you're going to get the fog head, the fatigue, the heavy limbs, maybe a problem with getting all of that phlegm out of the lungs. So this is their notion in traditional Chinese medicine, is that this damp plague gets in, and then where your weak spots are, that's where that climatic energy is going to affect the most. Okay, so as well, just for if you're a nerd or if you've been studying this kind of stuff on your own, there's one other piece of theory you need to know is it's called the 6 stages of disease progression. And this is old school Chinese medicine knowledge about how these very strong febrile diseases enter the body. So they say they go through stages. If you're lucky, if you've caught a mild cold, right? You'll remember your mild cold. You get a headache back here, right? And then you get body aches and you get a little tired, and then you sneeze and cough, and then it just goes away, right? This is a mild cold. And they say, oh, that's the first stage of disease. They call it Tai Yang, which is associated with these meridians in the back of the body. Then if you get something a little stronger, they say, oh, that goes to the next level, which is traditionally they call Yangming. You don't need to know that, but that goes into your stomach and your intestines. So this is where, oh gosh, it wasn't just a cold. It's been with me a while and I'm queasy and I've got diarrhea and I've got these various digestive complaints. They say, so a lot of traditional medicine is about trying to arrest the disease as it's entering the body and kick it back out before it gets to go any deeper. The trick with this one and with serious diseases, according to this type of energetic medicine, is that they'll go all the way in. All the ones that say yang are associated with these meridians like on the back of the body. And this is the protective area of your body. So if it only goes in as far as the yangs, you're doing pretty good. You've got yang number 1, yang number 2, yang number 3. Hopefully this isn't too nerdy for you. Then if it goes into the yin organs, this is where these diseases start to become more debilitating. So instead of something that, oh yeah, I had a fever, last year, now it's, I had a fever and ever since then I'm anxious all the time. Or I had a fever the summer before COVID started and my memory wasn't quite right. I had this terrible, terrible flu. And to get my brain back online after that, it was as if some resources in my body were taxed by that. So that's when it has started to go into these yinner meridians of the body. Okay, good. Not too nerdy for Sharon. Thank you, Sharon, for letting me know. So this is important to us because just in case you want to look up stuff on your own, I'll drop names of meridians and stuff, but don't worry about it. Soon we'll do some Qigong exercises and hopefully tie it all in a bow by the end and it'll all make sense. But when it goes into this level called Tai Yin level, this is associated with your lung meridian and your spleen and pancreas meridian. So the lung meridian, quite obviously in COVID, the lung is the organ that is most often and most severely affected in this particular disease process. But the spleen and pancreas meridian, you have to know a little bit about Chinese medicine. Now there is the possibility of diabetes in long COVID. There is the possibility of pancreatitis, but energetically, the spleen pancreas meridian refers to a couple of things. It refers to your ability to take food and turn it into vital energy. You can kind of see the crossover to Western medicine, right? That's the insulin and glucagon in your pancreas. So the ability to take food and turn it into vital energy. And the other function that's important to us is the ability to take fluids and to either transform those into like the lubricating, cooling yin of your body, or excrete out excess fluids. So if that doesn't happen, you get the accumulation of this energy that they call damp. And that's where, again, the signs in general are heavy limbedness, foggy headedness. This is where sometimes in the long COVID, you don't have an active viral infection in your lungs anymore, but you still are producing phlegm, and you just can't quite get rid of the mucus in here. One of the other pieces that is happening for folks is that they are not getting enough sleep because their tonsils and adenoids are still swollen. And so they're actually having a type of sleep apnea because the lymphatic system isn't draining in here. All of this, according to Chinese energetic medicine, is governed by the power of this spleen and pancreas meridian. So that's where we are going to focus to boil down all the nerdiness. Hopefully I've given the Qigong masters something to think about and the acupuncturists something to, oh, okay, yeah. And the lay people something to kind of chew on a little bit. But for what we need to know, it's this Tai Yin level of they're saying, oh, the disease has entered too far into the body. And so now it's actually weakening these processes instead of just kind of marshaling the defensive energy. Now it's actually sort of calling on the more fundamental energies of your body, the things. This is one of the understandings that we'll need if we want to address this with Qigong. Is traditionally the thought is you have so much energy and it's there in you, this sort of metabolic force to extract energy out of the air you breathe and to extract energy out of the food you eat and to send waste along and then to keep your brain working and thinking happy thoughts and keep your heart beating. All of this takes energy in the body. And the theory goes, if you have to do all of that and you have to marshal a whole bunch of other energy to fight a disease, the sort of level of basic metabolic force you have is going to be eaten away at or eroded over time. This gives rise to the main syndrome that we want to think about in terms of long COVID, which is called Qi deficiency. So this is why this is Qi medicine for long COVID recovery, because, well, we're going to be talking from a Qigong, medical Qigong perspective. But the main thing you want to think about, if you're familiar with Chinese medicine, then this will spark a whole lot of research that you could do. But as well, I'll give you a few exercises, is to tonify the deficiency of Qi. This is going to be your major leverage point. So just a little more basic Chinese medicine for those who need it. So when they said spleen damp and somebody asked, well, what's spleen damp? That's the presence of this soggy energy has come in. And then the spleen pancreas meridian is supposed to transform that soggy energy. Like you could kind of say it's like the function of your lymphatic system to a certain degree. So it's supposed to, pull up all the extra sogginess, pull it out of the tissues where it's not supposed to be, dump some of it back into your small intestine. So some of it can leave and some of it can be recycled. And because this organ and meridian don't have enough Qi, they don't have enough energy, that job goes undone. And all of this damp sogginess builds up in the body. Does that make sense? Am I speaking a different language too much, or is this kind of making sense? Okay, cool. So just the basics. We can only kind of do a high flyover, but do let me know in the chat box if I'm saying anything that's just like totally confusing. Okay, some of the other things that can happen. So right there, we've got spleen qi deficiency, and you know how that happened according to this theory, right? Illness got into too far, and they call this a taxation due to illness, right? Similar thing can happen if you work too hard, like for too long. We know the body, you can actually start to wipe out your reserves a little bit. Or if you, some people, they'll notice if you do physical training too much, you can give yourself an anxiety disorder. You can give yourself depression. And according to energetic medicine, it's like, yeah, you're using too much energy. Of course, your system's it's gonna wipe out. You'll give yourself digestive problems. You'll screw up your gut microbiome. So we've got our first one. Illness went in too far, got into that spleen in the lungs and used up the energy. You had to run your body and fight a disease at the same time. And you had to do that for too long that now you're running on a deficit of energy. So this gives rise to a number of symptoms. Shortness of breath. Shortness of breath, in case you're following along in your Chinese medical textbook, that's qi deficiency as it's manifesting in the lungs, or qi deficiency in general. So one of the ways that we would treat this is it's all going to come back to the spleen pancreas meridian, tonifying it, but you would tonify that, and then you would also tonify the lungs so that the lungs can feel like they can get a deep enough breath, and you feel like you're actually getting enough oxygen from that breath to run your body. Okay, so that's one, shortness of breath. Another one is lassitude or fatigue. So a lot of the fatigue, according to Chinese medicine, is going to be from this deficiency of the spleen pancreas. So that itself, that deficiency feels like fatigue. In one of the classic texts, they say, how do you know they've got spleen qi deficiency? And the doctor says, oh, 4 limbs feel useless and they want to lie down. And when I learned that, I was like, relatable, man, that is relatable. 4 limbs useless, wants to lie down. So in this, that's a sign of the spleen qi deficiency itself. But the thing to know, and this is where we want to intervene if we can, is you feel tired because the spleen is deficient, but you also are not extracting enough energy from your food to build that level of energy back up, because that's the organ that's supposed to do that. So we really want to intervene in there. So we've got a number of these. I haven't heard loss of appetite in the long COVID symptoms, but that's another classic one of the spleen qi deficiency. So it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so did we say foggy headedness? No, we were just on qi deficiency itself. So shortness of breath, lassitude, these are your main qi deficiency symptoms that are going to be covered by bolstering the qi of the body, primarily through the spleen and the lungs. Okay, then when it comes to foghead, this is considered to be the presence of damp that's not being transformed by that spleen meridian. It's said to be the presence of that damp, right? So its job is to burn up and separate the fluids, etc. It doesn't have enough energy to do its job. It calls in, hey, meridian body, can't come in today. Sorry, I just don't have enough qi. Gas prices are too high. So then you get now translating it over into Western science, I don't know that there actually is fog in there, but if we can speak poetically, that's certainly what it feels like. And according to Chinese medicine, that's the presence of damp. Similarly, mucus in the lungs, mucus in the nose. Some people, we might be seeing that their allergies are worse this year because they either already have mucus stuff going on in here, or these tissues are already inflamed. As well, the immune system might be a little taxed, or hypersensitive, which we can talk about in a minute. But mucus in the lungs, that thing of the swollen glands here, all of these are considered dampness in the spleen pancreas meridian, right? So it doesn't have enough qi, it can't do its job to transform damp. And so then we have this secondary symptom of dampness. A little bit of the forgetfulness can come in here, memory issues that people have, but only where that's the foggy headedness that they're experiencing. Okay, we can move. We're just nailing symptoms, and then I'm going to give you some lifestyle recommendations. Okay, heart palpitations. Have you or someone you love experienced these in their long COVID journey? Heart palpitations? Yes. So heart palpitations, according to Chinese medicine, now we're moving from qi deficiency to blood deficiency. And here's the idea that spleen pancreas meridian is supposed to extract the energy from food and then turn it into the nutritive quality of your blood. These are poetic terms. Don't go to your doctor, please. And don't tell, if you do, don't tell them I told you this, but don't go to the doctor and go like, Reverend Fauci said I have blood deficiency. No, it's speaking poetically. You can't do a blood test for blood deficiency. There are correlates. You might be anemic, and that would be a blood deficiency symptom. But we're speaking poetic. You can go to your acupuncture and tell acupuncturist, herbalist, tell them that all day. Don't go to your MD and say blood deficiency. So in the poetic system, because we're not extracting the nutritive essences of food properly, we don't have enough energy for that. We're not making blood, this nutritive substance that lubricates, cools, and nourishes your body. And according to Chinese medicine, when the heart isn't getting enough blood, it tells you, I'm not getting enough blood, bro. And you start to get these heart palpitations. You get other issues in there. Now, this is not to address what may be going on, because some people actually have scar tissue in their heart. So you definitely want to be working with your medical provider if there are tests that they can do, and not just go, oh yeah, I guess it's just blood deficiency, I'll eat some red dates. You really want to rule out cardiac damage. But if it's just, oh, I'm having a little heart palpitation, you might try some of the nutritional recommendations or some of the Qigong exercises. And if that starts to take those heart palpitations down, well, you had a real win that day, and you just take that win. Okay, so heart palpitations is one with this blood deficiency. Another one is anxiety. And those feel kind of the same, right? The physical thing, which is a heart palpitation, often goes along with the emotional thing, which is the anxiety that we experience. That, in this case, I'm guessing it can be other stuff, but I'm guessing in this case, because it's a short class, we're chalking that up to blood deficiency, because a lot of folks, when you start to nourish this quality of blood, Chinese medical notion of blood, the anxiety begins to decrease. And it's the same thing. According to that, all of these organs have their kind of like mental, emotional, mind-body correlate. And so when the heart doesn't have enough blood to calm it down, to like feel full and anchored and kind of heavy, they say the spirit floats. And so it's this anxiety, which is like, oh, I can't root down. So we nourish, and then that spirit starts to be able to root down once again. And then one of the last ones in this blood deficiency category is the lightheadedness that people will feel. And I think, did I already say memory loss with the blood deficiency? This is where we'll get the memory function is often going to happen with this blood deficiency. So these are just some things. You're welcome to look these up on the internet. I don't promise you'll find great articles, but if this poetry of Chinese medicine is intriguing to you, then certainly look those up, and you might, wind your way through the poetry rabbit hole and go, that actually, I think that's talking about my syndrome. So let's see, what are some of the other symptoms? Okay, hair loss. Oh, hair loss goes right under the blood deficiency as well. So that blood is also one of the things that's nourishing your hair. Now, some of these, according to Chinese medicine, are also functions. They say if the illness becomes too taxing, it goes from just weakening your spleen, who's the metabolic transformer, and they say it starts to dip into your long-term reserves. And that's where, and a lot of us will have this, to a kind of minor degree. And then some people will have this very seriously, but this is where you get the extreme fatigue. This is where some of the depression can come in. So some of the depression will come in with qi deficiency. That feels like everything feels like too much. I don't have enough energy to face it. That's right. It's that, oh, I don't have enough energy. I don't have enough energy. When the illness has gotten down to the level they call essence, right? So I'm calling this your long-term reserves, right? You stopped spending the capital, or you stopped spending the interest, That's, you tell I'm not into finance. And you're dipping into your capital at this point. This is where you get this depression, which is just, it's a little more crippling. Like you're not getting out of bed, not just because you're tired, but because of the depression. Depression has you sunk in bed. Similarly with the anxiety. So the essence is a part of the blood. It's also another part of this anchor and cooling of the body. And so when this essence, this kind of, you can think of it like as the root of your life force. When that root gets weak, everything floats. And it's a type of anxiety that feels much more intense than that blood deficiency. Okay, we're doing pretty good. Let me go look and see what other symptoms are in my notes, just so we can stay on time. And I hope this format is interesting for you. So we got shortness of breath, we got fog, head, cough, sleep disruption. Okay, so yeah, the sleep disruption, we're mostly going to think of it for today in terms of that dampness. It's mostly, if it's coming on from the COVID, it's usually going to be like a sleep apnea type dysfunction. But they say as well, if you become blood deficient and you can't anchor the consciousness, then the consciousness floats, is how they say it. And this is when you try to get to sleep and your mind is perking back up, or your sleep is very filled with dreams, or you're waking up constantly in the night without any provocation. They would say, oh yeah, your consciousness is floating, like you can't get it rooted down. So this can be in the blood deficiency. It can also be, for simplicity's sake, don't judge me too hard, acupuncturists on the call, but we could also say this is related to that essence deficiency, Okay, so we got blood, dizziness, I think I said in the blood deficiency aspect. And then the hair loss can be related to that essence deficiency as well as blood deficiency. And then when you have the muscle aches, the idea of this achiness that's like down at the level of your bones. So there are a couple different kinds of achiness that you might have. One is where it's like that bone level weariness. And that would be a part of this, what's it called? This essence deficiency, where it's like you're tapping that deep level of your body, and the body is telling you, knock it off, please. The other aspect of pain, and this goes with the flare-ups of fibromyalgia that people might experience, is they would say that you've got, in Chinese medicine, they call this like a half in, half out disease. And so this damp can cause what they call heat. We could just translate that as inflammation. And there's also a friction of, it's stuck in your body. Your body's defenses are trying to push it out, but it's also stuck inside. And so you get, this is the more kind of, we could say, I hope this poetry makes sense to you, but having experienced a few kinds of pain in my life, I know what I'm talking about from my side, but you have, on one level, it's like the bone level weariness. On another level, you have like, you can almost think of it as like muscle, fascia, and tendon level pain that feels kind of like inflammation. It's a hotter pain. So this would be slightly different than all of this other stuff I said before is based on deficiency. These are based on the presence of heat or inflammation. Okay, what else? Yeah, tinnitus. So an inflammation. So like we just said, yeah, that could be the inflammation itself, or that kind of Shaoyang half in, half out battle. But yeah, the tinnitus can also be related to dipping into the essence or dipping into the blood. And tinnitus I often see with liver meridian. And so my first guess would be liver blood deficiency, like probably a severe liver blood deficiency. So yeah, hopefully that speaks to that question from the chat box. Okay, so we went over the overview. Let's pause and see, was that nerdy enough? Do you want to give me an emoji? Do you have a question you want to put in the chat box before we go into recommendations, interventions, protocols? Okay, let me just wait for the responses. Looks good. All right, cool. Just trying to go quick, so because I know your time is precious. And if you yourself are suffering from this, then your energy is precious. So let's make it just a 45 to 60-minute class and keep you happy. All right, so Moving on to therapeutics, the first one to recommend according to Chinese medicine, and this is actually, it goes well with kind of a Western medical recommendation as well, is what they call a clear, bland diet. A clear, bland diet. I know, boring, move to the monastery and make me some unseasoned oatmeal. No, you can season your oatmeal, don't worry. But the notion traditionally is that this spleen, pancreas meridian, basically it wants 100-degree soup. That's the best food for it to digest. And kind of like, we can know, like, if you grind up your veggies into a smoothie, you're going to get the best absorption from them because all of their molecules are all sort of readily available. If you half scarf your cheeseburger and that plops into your stomach, you're not actually going to digest a lot of that cheeseburger because you haven't pulverized it enough. So the same thing, this is very intuitive, but the same thing that we want to do when we are ill, which is like, oh, just eat some soup or some bread, right? Generally, I mean, I don't know about you, but if I'm sick, I don't go like, wow, you know what I could go for is the deep dish meat lovers pizza. Yeah, like it just feels wrong. And if you've done this, I remember once upon a time, I was trying to learn energetic medicine and they were like, oh, when you start to get sick, eat some really spicy food and that'll catalyze the defensive energy and push it out. Okay, I'm here to tell you that only works with wind cold, but I had wind heat. And so I ate some really spicy food and then I had a sore throat for 2 days. So they say you want clear, bland, which is quite intuitive. It doesn't mean it has to be too bland. Put some salt on your oatmeal, put a pinch of cardamom in that. It's just going to be wonderful for you. But if you can make yourself a pot of chicken soup, this is one of the best. And if you've got your crock pot and you can long cook it all day, this is going to be one of the best things for you because the broth, the body just absorbs this, especially if you're making a bone broth. And if you don't have time to long cook your own chicken soup, go out and get one of those bottles of bone broth from the store. And you've extracted all of this nutrient from deep inside this little being who is helping you heal. And this is going to be very readily available for your body to take up and replace some of those deficiencies that fighting the battle against that illness has worn down. So soups, stews, it's very intuitive. The other master key though here is porridge. So in traditional Chinese medicine, and the part that I practice, which is more on lifestyle and tonification, I'm not an acute clinical practitioner myself, but more on tonification and nourishing life. The art of porridge is a long lost aspect of traditional Chinese medicine. And what's great is it's a specific intervention for this notion of spleen qi deficiency. So here's your recipe. Let's see if I remember. I always go by intuition nowadays, but you take like a cup of rice, you put it in your crock pot, and then you take like 10 times as much water. I think it is, might be 5. I just eyeball it nowadays. And what you'll get is after you leave that on overnight, it cooks down and you just have this watery, soupy rice porridge, which is really delicious. Okay, traditionally it's supposed to be white rice, they say, and partially we can think of that as because the sugar, the nutritive energy from that is just very, very available. You're not going to get the same kind of fiber for your gut, but you want this just available energy. Bodybuilders do this too now. They love white rice and chicken breast. So because it just goes right in. So you cook this white rice, and then the fun part is you can add in tonic herbs into your porridge. You can add in tonic herbs into your porridge. So I'll recommend for you a few that you might enjoy. So one is called, and I'll put these in the chat box, one is called Codonopsis, which is Dangshan. Yeah, these, so normally what you do is you cook that overnight, then you wake up like 2 hours before breakfast, because you're going to do your meditation for that long or something like that. And then you add your herbs and you let those cook in for like the last 2 hours. So Cotonopsis, Dangshen, yeah, sorry about the caps. Why are you shouting at me? So you add those in the last 2 hours if you can. So Cotonopsis, Dangshen is called poor person's ginseng. And it's because it's a milder herb than ginseng. It doesn't heat you up the way ginseng does, but it's a very strong tonic herb for the qi, for these reserves. So if your issue is about these reserves having been depleted, Cotonopsis is going to be one of your good friends. You might want to add in as well some of the medicinal mushrooms. And we don't really have time to talk about the kind of Western perspective on what may be happening, but there is a sense that your kind of immune reserves can be depleted. And what we know chemically is that some of these mushrooms like turkey tail and reishi and maitake and things like that, they have compounds in them that actually work to rebuild and stoke up your immune system. So some of these you'll want to look at, if they're an edible mushroom, then you just leave them in and you eat them in your porridge. If they're not edible, then you strain them out, but you leave the extract. So you've made an herbal extract in your food. This is, if you haven't been told this, let me tell you, this is this long lost aspect of Chinese medicine, but this is, if it's qi deficiency, this is one of the best ways to take your herbs, because if you take them in just in the little patent pill formula, the body has to kind of break those down and it doesn't have enough energy to do that. So their notion is you warm it up, you put it in this porridge full of carbs, and they would say, the qi, there's a subtle energy conveyed by that rice. So you put it in this porridge full of that, and then you've got all this energy, and the herbs have been like slow extracted in there. And that's the way your body is going to really be able to absorb those vital compounds the most efficaciously. Yes, the porridge overnight in the crock pot. I mean, you can cook it in the morning, I make oatmeal in my Instapot in the morning in a half an hour, and that's still pretty good. So main thing is do what you can, but if you can do an overnight rice porridge, good stuff. And then wake up in the morning, put the herbs in, wait a couple hours, and you're good to go. Let me give you some other herbs. The other one that's going to be really easy for you, Cotonopsis is actually pretty easy to find if you have a Chinese herb store nearby, or you can probably order it off of somewhere online. The easiest one to find will probably be goji berry. So guoqizi, goji berry. And this is a little fruit, and you just take a handful. You can kind of go like goji berry to taste, but it's a little fruit that is said to nourish qi and the blood and the yin. It's a very nourishing herb and food. So you can put that right in, and it will, again, these are not herbal prescriptions. These are really considered to be highly tonic foods. And they're almost better than strong herbal formulas when we're dealing with the deficiency of the spleen qi. Allergic to rice, yeah, use whatever you want, but if you can do Job's Tears barley, that's your second best. But oats, quinoa, amaranth, millet, any of these can be made into a porridge. And so you go with that. But Job's Tears would be the next one, because it actually helps to drain damp. And it's also one of the classic porridge bases. Okay, Chinese red date is another one that you can put in there. And this one is also highly tonifying for the blood and a little bit for the qi. Chinese red date. So again, you would have to have a Chinese store or a Chinese herb store around. But if you do, these are some of the classic, recommendations. And then the other one is longan berry, which you might be able to find, but if you've got an Asian grocery or herb store, then longan berry is another one. And this is another one of those. It helps to build the yin of your heart, so that palpitation, anxiety type stuff will begin to calm down. So these are just a few notions for food type herbs that you can begin to put in your porridge. And then this is one of the things I want to try to do is not replace your acupuncturist, should you feel so inspired by all of this poetry of energetic medicine that you go see them, but to give you the supplements for what you can do at home to make that work really work. Or If you're going to see your doctor, you don't have an acupuncturist, and you're like, then you won't hurt yourself, as far as I know, by making yourself a pot of porridge, right? The worst thing that happened is you got a good breakfast that tasted a little bit like mushrooms and herbs. So, so these are nice ways to go. And then you can make this savory if you like. That's what my wife does. And then I like mine sweet. If you're dealing with that blood deficiency and you want it sweet, your best guess is to put molasses in it. And that's actually from Western herbalism, because it's going to give you a lot of iron and some of these other micronutrients. So that's if you want it sweet. And then just go a little mild on your spices, because again, we're going for this clear, bland diet, and the spices we put in can really heat you up or cool you down. The mints can really cool a person down. Cinnamon can actually really heat you up, but you can put in a little bit. 2 spices that you might want to incorporate into your cooking are turmeric and ginger. Turmeric and ginger. And note, if you are having symptoms of the heat variety and ginger makes those worse, then you back right off of that, because ginger is a little hot. But for most people, it's not going to do that, because ginger is also an anti-inflammatory. And when you put the turmeric and ginger together, they combine forces, and they're going to start to help take down that inflammation. So according to the herbalists, taking down that inflammation is actually going to help reopen the bronchioles in your lungs, because they're cinched down actually because they are inflamed. It's going to help with pain relief at that muscle, tendon, fascia level. It's going to help with some of that eye strain, and it's actually going to help your body recover, because some of the reason it's not recovering is just now it's stuck in this cycle of inflammation, fatigue, inflammation, fatigue. So if any point you can get in there and intervene in that cycle, you are good to go. Okay, so this was your first one, porridge. the clear bland diet was actually the big one. So not a lot of ice cream. They say that Chinese medicine does not like ice cream. Ayurveda lets you have it if you're as hot as me. I mean, energetically speaking, not just because I am also cute with my little hairdo and stuff. But Chinese medicine, especially in qi deficiency, they say, don't eat a big old bowl of ice cream. Don't glug down all that coconut water. And they feel good because, they're so cooling. But they say you want this metabolic warmth. So they want you on soup. They want you on tea. They want you on porridge as much as you can. And then if you can make your meals a little more porridgey, like maybe it's enchilada night, and you're not making them too spicy, and you made a nut cheese, I don't know, watch it on the cheese, but see if you can really cook it down and get them kind of that soft, like like it's already halfway, the work is done of digesting it and breaking it down for you, whatever you're cooking. So like some casseroles, you might be able to do this. Okay, that reminds me of the other one, which is no grease, no alcohol during this recovery, because these are things, according to Chinese medicine, that increase damp. They increase damp. The Western medicine correlate would be that they're making your liver work harder, and we just don't want to make any of our organs work harder if we can. Okay, moving right along. I'm running down our time here. Okay, second thing. So that's diet. Oh, and then the other thing with that is, so grease, alcohol, and anything that makes you phlegmy. Anything that makes you phlegmy, you don't want. Anything that feels like it's generating mucus, that's the one that's got to go. Okay, next one is exercise for this phase. Flax oil is usually going to be fine. Ghee, you got to see how it makes you feel. Right, so ghee is pretty good, but it can be a little heavy according to this idea. But like a big old hunk of cheese every meal, not going to help you out. Fried foods, just don't do fried foods for a while, but put olive oil on your salad, of course. Take your omega-3 pills, of course. So it's really like, if we were to think like, I've been eating a lot of greasy food, that's the kind of stuff that you want to just, it's not really helping your health anyway, in a lot of cases. So you can just let it go. Okay, exercise. The good news is just do some mild exercise. Just do some mild exercise. One of the NITO findings is that I was reading this research today. They found that people with fibromyalgia who do saunas have a decrease of the experience of pain from their fibromyalgia. And there are a couple of notions about why this is. One is they actually feel that it messes with your brain's interpretation of pain, which is not to say fibromyalgia is psychosomatic. Don't go tell anybody I told you that, because I didn't say that. But it may be involved with how your brain is turning pain up or down. And they say when you expose your skin to that heat, it actually can help reset how the brain is working. But we also know that there's something in the sweating itself that actually helps with getting those symptoms to calm down. This is related in Chinese medicine to helping with those half in, half out diseases. According to this theory, if you can induce sweating, it helps to push out pathogenic energies that are in the body. So if you can induce sweating, it helps to push out those pathogens. So your exercise should induce a light amount of sweating, or you can do a sauna. But when I say a light amount of sweating, don't go back to CrossFit. Don't go to Ashtanga yoga class. Don't go to that hot lawsuit yoga class. That's not what we want, because in those cases, you're calling on the reserves, right? So ideally, you go to hot yoga class when your body's healthy, and they say it acts as a hormetic stressor, right? It taxes your body, and your body goes, oh, I need to get stronger. But in this case, those hormetic stressors don't work the same way. It taxes the body and you just stay taxed, or you get more taxed. So the recommended exercise is Tai Chi, Qigong, and it's basically any kind of Qigong, right? Before I give you just a few Qigong exercises, basically any old kind of Qigong that you can do, because it's that mild movement. Walking, and your exercise doesn't have to induce sweating, but I mentioned the sauna thing because if you can get a light dew, which is what they used to say, the old Tai Chi masters would go for, you don't want to be dripping sweat, but you want a light dew, that's going to help you to kind of push this stuff to the surface. This is very similar. I used to do some little case studies. When I taught at massage school, actually, I led an energetic medicine lab for the massage students because it was a Western school. And we did a number of case studies on fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And it's actually the same recommendation. If you exercise a little bit with those, the symptoms get better and clear up. If you exercise too much, you'll give yourself a flare up or a fatigue attack. And so you want to do enough Tai Chi in Chinese medicine for that. They would say, oh, that's relieving the stagnation in the system. And in this case, the idea is also that it's pushing pathogenic factors out of the body. So there's less of a load for the body to bear. So mild exercise is recommended. And in this, you can also put breathing exercise. So without struggling for breath, you can start to retrain your bronchioles out of this shortness of breath. So that could be just something as simple as box breathing. You can try it right now if you want. Let's do it on a 3. So you inhale for 3, 1, and then you hold 2, 3, and then you would exhale 2, 3, and you would hold your exhale 3. Let's try it again. Hold, exhale, hold. Okay, and then breathe normally. Hopefully that didn't tax anyone. So you can start at 3. If you have more than that, without straining, this is the trick. Without straining, you start to extend that. So maybe you can do a 5 count box breathing or a 6 count box breathing. And this starts to teach your body how to reabsorb oxygen. Okay, this was exercise. And last but not least, I'll give you a couple of Qigong things in a second. Rest. So rest, you want basic sleep hygiene, because if you're not getting adequate sleep, your body's not going to recover. This is also the same in fibromyalgia. At least last time I looked at the research, one of the things that's common is that sufferers don't tend to go all the way down into deep delta wave sleep, which is where your body like pumps out human growth hormone and repairs everything. So the brain is staying above the repair level sleep, and then you wake up and you feel as if your body has not been repaired, right? Some of us, if we've ever experienced sleep deprivation, there's a sense that like day 2 the body goes like, bro, you should have slept. That's kind of what fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue can feel like, because you're missing out on that. So if there's a way there, you can just look up sleep hygiene, and they'll be like, tape all your windows closed with aluminum foil or something like that. Make sure it's cool in your bedroom. All of these kind of things are very important so that the mind can relax and sink down. You might also look up herbs that will do that for you. I'm not recommending any particular herbs. I know what's worked for me, and those I love sometimes is kava. Kava can be a nice herb to help ease your way into sleep. Passion flower, these are Western herbs in general, or Western materia medica. Passion flower is a nice one. Skull cap is another classic witchy sounding herb. Hops. Beer won't work the same way. We're not allowed to have beer with our long COVID, even if it's got hops in there. So nice try, buddy. But best idea is you want to try to get your sleep regulated. If that means you have to get a CPAP machine, constant pressure airway, whatever that stands for, so that you're not experiencing sleep apnea, snoring, being awakened, then get yourself a CPAP machine. There are also lymphatic herbs that when you take them, they'll start to drain out this part of the body that's been inflicted by that dampness, and that might help you with your sleep as well. For me, I learned that side sleeping is very important. If I sleep on my back, I'll snore, and then my brain wakes me up and I don't get that deep sleep. If I sleep on my side, that does not happen. So sometimes just positionality. You can look up more on that on your own, because I'm in overtime and I'm going to try not to go very far into overtime. If you have to check out, I bless you. But I'll try to only go for 5 more minutes. Okay, that was sleep. And then reduce inflammation, we already kind of talked about with saunaing is for this. Herbs that reduce inflammation, again, you can ask your practitioner. A last thing that you might do is look into the notion of an anti-inflammatory diet. There are some foods that in general for people can be inflammatory. Good news, they're often those greasy ones, or ones that promote mucus in you. So we're already letting go of those. And there are some foods which are anti-inflammatory, which are usually your vegetables, your antioxidant rich foods. And so if you haven't thought about like, oh, wow, am I really importing a lot of antioxidants into my diet? That's something to think about. And in general, the more vegetables you eat, the more micronutrients you'll be getting, which are what your body needs to repair from the damage of this disease. Okay. Chocolate. My feeling about chocolate, I love chocolate. It's a little fatty though. And so you'll want to do that in moderation. You'll want to use your choco in moderation. Okay. Then Qigong exercises. So the main thing I'm going to advertise to you, and I'll do that at the very end, is I put out a class called Medical Qigong Therapy for the Autumn Season. And in that, it has a lot of the exercises that I'm going to recommend to you. So that one is for purchase. You can get that. I'll put the link up in a second. But as well, you can come to the series starting next week, which I'll also put the link up for in a second, where we'll be going through a series of 21-day little mini Qigong immersions. And the sequence that we're about to work on, which is called the Master's Sequence, is actually really good for all of these different meridians that we've talked about. It works them in a way, you might even get a mild sweat, you might do some breath training, but it really helps to clear the lungs, to clear the liver, to boost the spleen, to boost the kidneys. And so you could just do that whole set. But for those of you who know about Qigong or are going to watch this again, or who are going to purchase that course that I'll put the link up to in a second, I'll give you a couple ideas. Okay. So the first one are you have Qigongs that will clear your lungs. One famous one from the Wudang Hunyuan Qigong is very simply that you're going to make outward circles. And my hands are hovering above my body, but there's also a self-acupressure style where you can touch the body, and this is going to help all these meridians. And the mind-body part, what you're going to visualize is like you're gathering up any gunk or obstruction, phlegm, inflammation. You gather it, and then you pull it out, And you compost it down into planet Earth. There's some fresh compost for you. And then again, you rub. And your mind is like you're pulling out all the gunk, the heat, the phlegm, the fluid, the damage, whatever it is. You pull it out down into the earth. So classic recommendations for these would be about 100 circles. And when we're talking about medical Qigong, you are generally supposed to do your recommendation 4 times a day, 4 times a day. So that would be get up, you put your herbs in your porridge, you do 100 of these, and a couple of the other exercises I'll show you. And then you'd wait, and then at lunchtime, ding, ding, lunchtime, you do 100 of these. And you notice after a couple of days, you should start to feel some relief if it's the right exercise for you. Okay, the second one that you are going to do, let me remember which exercises we thought about. You can also do these seated. I'm standing up, but you could do these seated. The second one is called drawing the bow to regulate the lungs. And so you inhale, and like you're pulling a bowstring, and the position you want to fill your lungs as much as possible, and you visualize a white, bright energy filling the lungs. You exhale with this S sound. And you want to imagine that sound makes that light brighter, and it vibrates out any crud that's not supposed to be in there. Okay, let's do the other side. So you inhale and you puff them up. You do the S sound. You vibrate out any crud that's not supposed to be in there. Let's do the other side, just one set here. Bright white light, fill, 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 and then vibrate. And then last time, inhale. You can also feel that thing as you exhale. Like your whole system is pushing out anything that doesn't belong in it. Okay, the last couple for building that spleen chi. You have a spot here between your solar plexus and your tummy. There's a little point here that's meant to warm up that whole digestive pot, and you can just rub it. I'm going down the left and up the right, because that's the way my teachers taught me, down my left side and up the right. And you rub, and this is the same thing. This would be 50 to 100 times, about 5 minutes. And your mind-body portion is, you would imagine when you inhale, like an energy from the universe comes into your hands. When you exhale, it's sending it in, and it's filling up those digestive organs with whatever energy they need. So we're not going to do 50 to 100 times, but if this feels good to you, then again, you put it in your protocol. Try it 4 times a day. Shouldn't be too much. And all of these, you can do them sitting down, you can do these laying down, no problem. This is stimulating acupoint conception vessel 12 or REN 12. Is that right? 12, yes. For those of you who keep track of that kind of stuff. And then the same thing below the navel, between the navel and the pubic bone. This whole area is called the ocean of energy. And so this is very helpful in building up the energy in the body. And once again, I'm going down the left and up the right. And you would do this 50 to 100 times. This is actually the same thing if you went to your acupuncturist and they use the moxibustion, this little hot herb thing, to warm these points up. You're doing the same thing, but you're doing it with your hands and with your mind-body connection. You're just warming, 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 warming. So these are not the symptomatic treatment. We don't have time for all of it. If we need to, we'll do a part 2 later, but these are to start to get to the root of that issue. These are your basic lifestyle building exercises. And this can help you with any other herbalism, any other medical intervention that you're doing. These can help your body on its meridian level to have those resources that it needs to recover. So let me just go get these links for you. And if you have a quick question, pop it in the chat box. We will officially end, but I may have time to just address 1 or 2. So please feel free to pop those in. Okay. And here's next week, Intro to Qigong. And this is going to be beginning the series that will begin, which is going through my alchemical immersion series, which is like a whole 4-month worth of free programming. But this is just going to be a 21-day immersion where you'll learn that master sequence, which, like I said, you can do that whole thing as your protocol. It's really great, just general balancing Qigong treatment. And so feel free to sign up for that. That's a talk like this 1 week from now, except for we'll probably do a little more practice and just a little more fun, kind of a history of Qigong and just neat things. Let me go find the other one. And again, if you have a question, even if you want to say how epic this class was for you, you're welcome to say that too. Where is this page on my website? I forgot to get these links all loaded up beforehand. There it is. Can you give me the link? There it is. Okay. And then this class is the Qigong for Autumn. And in that video, I'm actually going to put this archived video as one of the sort of bonus materials. But you'll see there's a whole sequence in there that has exercises for rebuilding the lungs, rebuilding the spleen. There's a whole self-acupressure. And then the thing I'll be building this week is a little page that says which exercises to do for which illness. So there's Qigong recommendations for asthma, there's Qigong recommendations for not getting a cold, there's Qigong recommendations for long COVID, and all the exercises, I put them all in that course. It's made into like 3 different sets that you could do as your daily practice, but I put them in there so that my level 2 Qigong instructors would have all the protocols. They'd have all the exercises, and then it's mix and match. So that'll be in there this week, and you are welcome to get that course if that's interesting to you. Okay. Oh, how many circles with the lung clearing exercise before you drop? Go by feel. So with damp, now this is where we get a little woo-woo. I try to stay within the realms of the poetry of Chinese medicine, but this is where it's like witch doctor-y. Is they say with that damp, your hands, if you're sensitive, they'll have this feeling like, oh, how'd my hands get sticky? That's when you flick. So that's the traditional, but you could say, 5 to 10. If you don't feel that, don't worry. We all are sensitive to our inner life in different ways. But classically, they say, you'll go and it's like, oh, wow, it got hot or got heavy or got sticky. They say, oh, yeah, you got that damp. Now get it out. You compost it down. Okay, any other quickies or just say nice things? Very good. Well, I'm so glad you joined me tonight. I hope this was helpful to you. And next week, Intro to Qigong. I hope you'll come, or tell your friend. That's really a beginning. Today was like Chinese medicine and this and that and half in and half out and blah, 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 blah. Next week, it's going to be more fun. Like, this is what Qi is, and here's how you dance with it. So feel free to bring a friend who you think might be interested in that. And I think with that, we will sign off. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful Thursday. Many blessings to you.